Welcome to Aging Rewired, a podcast by Senior Planet from AARP, where we explore the intersections of aging and technology. I'm your host, Sheila Solomon. In this episode of Aging Rewired, we'll explore the world of sex, relationships, and online dating for older adults. I'm handing the mic over to two of my colleagues, and I think Aging Rewired listeners are in for a real treat. This episode's chock full of practical advice on how to get what you need from your partner and honest conversations about the realities of senior sex.
Sexually, what worked for us has changed. What brings us pleasure has changed. What we want a partner to do and for how long and in what way, all of this has changed. What hasn't changed is that we never learned how to communicate about sex.
Today's conversation takes place between Virge Randall and Joan Price. You may know Virge Randall as the managing editor of SeniorPlanet.org. Virge's Open Thread series looks at aging with humor and insight on topics like dumb smart technology and advice to your younger self, and invites readers to share their thoughts. Joining Virge is Joan Price. Joan, who's now 80, has been writing and speaking about senior sex since 2005 and is globally known as an expert in older age sexuality. She's authored 4 books about sex and aging and has written her popular Ask Joan sex advice column for SeniorPlanet.org for a decade. Thank you for tuning in. Please enjoy the show.
This is great, and I'm really glad we're having the chance to talk to Joan Price. She is the author of our most popular feature, the monthly Ask Joan column, and each month she answers a reader's question, problem, or concern about their intimate lives. No topic is off limits, and that's because it's part of disrupting aging and why our readers love Joan by acknowledging that intimacy and sexuality does not have an expiration date. You've been in the forefront of sex education for older people for many years, written books and conducted hundreds of talks about it. Can you tell us what are the main questions that you get about senior sex and sexuality, Joan?
Well, thank you, Virge, and thank you so much for having me here. I see the questions I'm asked as under the umbrella, the old ways don't work the way they used to anymore. Mm-hmm. And that can mean, for example, erections are more problematic, or vaginal penetration is no longer as pleasant and sometimes as possible as it used to be. It isn't the main way of getting pleasure anymore, if it ever was that. And it also involves relationships. The old ways don't work anymore as when we were young, this is what our relationship was like. And now we've been living together for 30, 40, 50 years. And yet, no matter how stable or not stable the relationship is, our bodies are changing. Mm-hmm. And sexually, what worked for us has changed. What brings us pleasure has changed. What we want a partner to do and for how long and in what way. And all of this has changed. What hasn't changed is that we never learned how to communicate about sex. And this is really the crux of so many things that I'm asked. My partner this, I want that. I'm single and I wish people knew that this. And I try to pleasure myself and I don't dare tell. All of this, I don't know how and I don't dare, is all about expressing yourself. Saying what you need, learning what you need, saying what you need, being able to say in an authentic and still loving way to a partner, if you have one, this is what I need now. Can we work on this? I took a long time getting to your answer, and I'm not to your question. I'm not sure I actually answered it.
Well, no, I think that you actually touched on a number of really important issues concerning people as they get older who are sexually active or want to get sexually active or remain sexually active, because I do see the questions that you entertain, the questions that are sent to you. I also see the comments that people send in. And I have to say, in some cases, the anguish is palpable. There is so much yearning, there is so much misunderstanding. As people in our age group, there's a real need for like a phase 2 sex education. I mean, the first phase was when we were in high school in health class. We need flyers with our social security statements. I don't have the answer, but it is different. And you've touched on it perfectly.
The yearning and misunderstanding is perfect. That's just a perfect nutshell of exactly what is troubling people. And yes, anguish. And I read it all the time in the emails I'm sent to me, not just through Senior Planet, but my inbox is always full of people who are needing help. And you're right. We need a whole new sex education. I mean, the first one wasn't very good anyway, but
I'll say.
I mean, it was terrible. It was just about reproductive systems. It was
Uh-huh.
nothing about passion, nothing about desire, nothing
Uh-huh.
about why we might want to do the things we're being told not to do. And you're trying as Senior Planet because you do give me that platform once a month to go in depth into someone's question. And I love that. And of course, in the rest of my work on my blog, I have webinars, I have all sorts of tips on my website, joanprice.com. This is what I've been doing for 20 years. People say, wait, you're almost 81 years old and you're not retired? Why would I retire? This is such
Right.
fulfilling work.
You're absolutely on point here. Do you think in the hundreds of questions that come to you in various ways, is there a main or a chief kind of category? Is it like differing sexual levels of desire between partners, or improving technique, or sex is painful? What do you think? What have you been seeing?
It's all of that. And number one is incompatibility of sexual needs and desires
Wow.
between spouses or lovers.
Even
That
after
well,
40 years?
well, especially after 40 years, because
Wow.
as I said, our bodies change and what we need changes. And often, and of course, we grow as human beings. We're not the 20-year-olds. We're not
Mm-hmm.
those people. We barely remember those people, in fact. We remember the words to every song that was popular at that time.
Oh,
We
yeah.
can sing them even right now, but we don't inhabit those same bodies or minds anymore. And so what's happened is, for example, one person wants sex less now. And sometimes, and this really is anguish, one person is done with sex and the other one is saying, "But what about me? But what about me? What am I supposed to do?" This happens over and over, and you've seen it, Verge, in column after column. And I try not to answer the same question, but I keep getting the same question. So if there's a different backstory to it, if there's a different take on it, then I'll answer it again. But it seriously breaks my heart when I keep getting these same emails. And not always, but often, it is the woman, if it's a heterosexual couple, and I'm not saying they all are, but if it is, it's the woman who's saying, sex is not as pleasurable for me anymore. I don't like it anymore. I don't want it anymore. And maybe they'll tell me I'm not attracted to my partner anymore. And often, but not always, it is the man saying, but wait, we took a vow of fidelity. What do I do now? And I often suggest, and people sometimes go, wait, what are you suggesting? I am suggesting that if this happens, that they renegotiate the exclusivity terms of their relationship.
Ooh, free pass?
Yes.
Ah, interesting.
If my partner said, I'm done with sex. We're a great couple. I love you very much, but I'm not interested in sex anymore. So we'll just be companionate, it's called, in a companionate relationship. And I would say, wait, what does that mean? Does that mean that if I want sex, I have to do without? Or does it mean I have to be satisfied with pleasuring myself with my sex toys, which are wonderful sex toys, but I like touch also? Or does it mean I am free to find a friend with benefits? Or does that mean it's a don't ask, don't tell? You don't want to know about it, but as long as I'm discreet, it's not cheating. And very often, the person who doesn't want sex will say, no, you can't either. You can't do that.
Well, there's an emotional connection in the act, and there's an emotional connection in the relationship. And I think that for some people, that's very tricky to navigate. And I think that's why go find somebody else to satisfy your desires is almost like the nuclear option. It might threaten the relationship. What do you think
But
about
so
that?
does one partner saying we're not having sex anymore. I mean, that's often can be grounds for terminating the relationship, depending on it depends. It all depends. I can't say that always happens, but it has been known to happen. And especially if the partner who's closed down won't talk about it, won't see a counselor, won't say, is there some way we can compromise on this? And I want to tell you something, Virge, which you didn't ask about. But one of the big reasons that some people will close down sex is that they don't feel desire the way they used to. And the way they used to was, and I've explained this many times in my column, so forgive me if this is old news to you, but it might not be to the listeners. There are two kinds of desire. There is spontaneous desire and there is responsive desire. Spontaneous desire is hormone driven. And as we get older, we don't have the hormones saying, we got to have sex. We've got to propagate. In other words, that's what these hormones are saying. And once we're done with that and we don't have the hormone rush to say, you got to have sex. It's been an hour. You got to have sex again.
An hour?
Wow. You vaguely remember that? We vaguely remember that. But when that isn't happening anymore, and in fact, we're not even getting that you've got to have sex because it's been a few days or it's been a few weeks or even it's been a few months. Often people who don't understand the two kinds of desire will think, I'm never going to be in the mood again, and so we don't need to do this anymore. When actually responsive desire is, I would say, one of the major keys to having good sex in our older years. Responsive desire means that while we may not feel desire or feel in the mood to begin with, if the relationship is good, if the sex, the prelude to sex, the warm up, the touching, the kissing, if that is all pleasurable and we relax into the pleasure of that, whether we come into it thinking we're in the mood or not, and then as we relax into the pleasure, our body starts responding. In other words, responsive desire. So what now we're in the mood once these things happen. So responsive desire is desire that follows the action of pleasurable physiological warm up. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm wondering, it seems like a couple would either have to agree, like, this is date night and we're going to do this and we're going to spend some time doing this, or somebody has to get the ball rolling, if you know what I mean. And do you see any kind of division as long as we're discussing that? Is it equally divided, or are women more likely to need or use responsive sex than men? What do you think?
What I've seen is yes, women are, though men also need more warm up. But what you said about date night, let me pick up on that. Date afternoon, not night, not after dinner. One of the reasons that we get aroused is the blood flow to the genitals upon physiological arousal and upon a mental foreplay where we're going, oh, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So what we need to do is have scheduled sex. Yes, have scheduled dates, but not after dinner because the blood flow is going to the digestive system. Instead, in the afternoon, or even in the morning if you're a morning person, because then we're fresh, we're not tired, the blood flow is ready for us. And yes, we need to schedule sex. If we waited for both of us to be in the mood at the same time, we might never have sex again. But if we schedule, say, on Saturday at 11:30 in the morning, we'll have the sex toys charged because that should be part of our sex play too. We'll have everything set up. We'll be relaxed. We'll be showered. We'll take a break from each other beforehand so that we can come together. And if we do this, I mean, people say it should be spontaneous. Ain't gonna happen, people. Please, ain't gonna happen. You've been waiting for it to be spontaneous, and look where you are. Don't wait for it to be spontaneous. Schedule your dates, your sex dates, and schedule them without goals. Schedule them as we're going to come together, we're going to cuddle, we're going to kiss, we're going to relax together, we're going to take plenty of time, we're going to start touching. If one thing leads to another at that point, yes, we're prepared for sex. We have the lubricant at the bedside table. We have the sex toys at the bedside table. We have some cleanup washcloths at the bedside table. So we're prepared for whatever might happen, but we're not saying it's got to happen this way. And I suggest when people come together on a sex date that one of the questions we can ask each other is, what hurts and what works for you today? What should I know? What are you in the mood for? And whether you've been together for 3 dates or 50 years, that's still a beautiful opening question.
Now we're going to take a quick break to tell you that Aging Rewired is a podcast produced by Senior Planet from AARP. If you're interested in exploring all that Senior Planet from AARP has to offer, you can find us online at www.seniorplanet.org. The Senior Planet website offers a variety of free virtual programs each week, from technology lectures to exercise sessions, discussion groups, and special events. Can't make it to a live class? On-demand programs and tech tip videos let you learn on your own schedule. On seniorplanet.org, you can also find original and engaging articles for older adult readers on topics like finance, health, entertainment, and relationships. Looking to meet new friends with common interests? Explore Senior Planet Community, our ad-free social platform exclusive to older adults. This safe digital space is a place for you to join interest groups, start conversations, and make connections. Still have questions about Senior Planet? Call our free hotline at 888-713-3495, Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern. Find out about upcoming programs and receive free tech help from our team of patient, helpful agents. Learn how to use Zoom, set up an email account, and more. That hotline number is 888-713-3495. Now let's get back to the episode.
I have a question just to bring up something that you had just mentioned, and that's about sex toys. I think that there are some older men that are threatened by them, and was wondering if you had any thoughts about how to bridge that divide.
I have thoughts.
Well,
Absolutely.
let's hear them.
This is not the first time I've heard this question, Virge. I hate to keep everything as man-woman, and I hope we won't always do that, but in this case, it often is that because gay couples understand that a sex toy, a well-chosen, well-placed sex toy can be a wonderful addition to the sex play as a couple. They get that. They do that already. So heterosexual couples, maybe because the man in this couple has been raised when we were growing up as my genitals are the answer to every woman's wish. And this is all we need. I just pull it out and look.
Right. It's the magic dick.
She just magic dick. She has to just restrain herself into having an orgasm upon just seeing my magic dick. That's not how it works. It never worked that way, guys. It never did, and it really doesn't now. I hate to break it to you. So listen, do you want your partner to have an orgasm? Do you want your partner to feel great pleasure? Then relax. It's not about you. It's about finding out what her body and her emotional state need every time you have sex. It's not going to be a blanket. This is what I need. This is what I need. And once you understand that, we're set for life. No, every time it might be different. It might be my wrist arthritis is acting up, so I can't do this, or my knees hurt, or my neck arthritis. I need to be relaxed on my back. This is part of sex, and it can be part of the humor of sex. My partner and I laugh. We say, old people sex. And what hurts today? Okay. Oh, be careful of that. And I might say, I need to change position. This is going to take a while.
Right. But the key is communication
The key is communication.
And an understanding between the two parties.
And being old, I don't remember your exact question, so I don't know if I answered it.
I'm enjoying the trip.
Telling men about... So I would like to have... Now, I gave advice to men. I give advice to the woman in that relationship. Practice saying, this is what my body needs. This is what my body needs.
Over and over again.
Yeah, until he gets it. What does your body need today? Once he can ask that, my work on this planet is done.
You've done a column for Senior Planet for 10 years. Have the questions changed over the past decade?
Interestingly, they have not changed. The questions that I was asked 10 years ago are still the ones that I get today. I get the incompatibility of senior needs and desires. I get dating as seniors and initiating sex in new relationships. I get orgasms or their lack of such. I get sex toys, or I get where the answer is sex toys, though the question wasn't. For example, I have so much trouble reaching orgasm. Have you incorporated a good sex toy into solo play and partner play? Because the intensity of a sex toy is often the answer between reaching an orgasm and not. And this is not just something to do when you're alone, because I get questions from women primarily who say, when I'm alone, I can bring myself to orgasm with a vibrator. But when I'm with my partner, nothing happens. And I say, because one thing people don't know is when I get a question, I always email the person who asked the question and I ask follow-up questions so I really understand what's going on. And then they have to answer those or I don't use their question. So people who submit questions, watch your inbox and watch your spam, because sometimes my questions go there because I mentioned sex. But when I'm doing the follow-up for someone who says I can't reach orgasm with a partner, I say, well, pardon me for being nosy, but I need to understand this. What is it you do with your partner? And do you incorporate a lot of warm up? Do you incorporate using a sex toy either for your arousal or for the orgasm itself? And they'll usually say, well, no. Well, there you are. And so then I have to explain how to do that and how to talk to a partner about doing that.
You know, you've written about sex toys a couple of times over the years, and I have to say that even now, I still get comments in the comments section about that very topic. I think that there's a real hunger for more information about that. And I think that older people are claiming their right to have pleasurable sex.
Yes.
And it's an important part of that. I wonder, though, has the digital world and technology affected or influenced attitudes and practices about sex, especially among older people. You recently did a column for us about a woman who said that porn replaced her in the relationship, and we had a firestorm in the comments.
We did have a firestorm. This was actually the first time in 10 years that I felt, pardon me for saying it this way, but I get emotionally involved in these too. That people are hating Joan Price because well, I mean, people can look up that column. They can see what I said and what the comments said. But to answer your digital question, so much has changed for people, even people who say, "Oh, I'm not computer literate." Yeah, but they're writing to me via Senior Planet. They're emailing me. They use the computer more than they think they do. They know more about it than they acknowledge to themselves, perhaps. But because Senior Planet is online, this is where they get so much community as well as information. AARP is online. There's amazing community on AARP. Information is online, misinformation is online, and we have to address that. Even my sex toy reviews are online. I've been reviewing sex toys from a senior perspective for 12 years, maybe.
I'm raising this because I'm thinking in terms of how the availability of technology, in a way, can inculcate in some people an attitude that's not optimal for a mutually satisfying intimate relationship, that it commoditizes the partner. I mean, I've done online dating and I stopped doing it because I felt like these guys thought they were in a supermarket, what, you don't wear slingback heels? I mean, that is a real thing.
That's
Slingback heel.
really?
I
Oh
swear to
my
God.
God.
I swear to God, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you've got OnlyFans, you've got Craigslist and online dating sites of all kinds, and I'm just wondering if that aspect of digital living, if you think it's been done anything to change or influence how older people think about sex. I mean, are older people saying, "Hey, the party finally started. Let me just jump in and see if I could find a 25-year-old or something like that." Do you have any thoughts, or have you experienced any questions from people that indicate that?
I've experienced a lot of people who try online dating and they're demoralized by it. However, online dating is the way we date these days.
That is
I mean, what
true.
do you do when we were young? Let me do it this way. When we were young, single people who were available were everywhere. They were in our social groups. They were at school. They were at our church, our faith groups. All the things we were doing, we were surrounded by them. And with hormones propelling us, they were interested in us. It was so easy to meet people. And now, what do you do when you want to meet people? What do? You go to a coffee shop and hang out? Well, you'll have some good coffee. The coffee's really good in coffee shops these days. You can write in your journal or read a book, but chances are you are not going to meet someone. And if you see someone that you're attracted to, you don't know if that person is available. I mean, this could be someone who in a 40-year marriage is just stopping by before going home from work to have a cup of coffee. If you're not in a big city with lots of events going on all the time, where do you go to meet people? You go to your computer. That's just where the people are. And because you're saying, "Where do I meet people?" I guess I better go online. The people you want to meet are doing the same thing. Dates, love connections, marriages, they're all happening because of online dating for us.
If you had one tip for people interested in online dating, what would that be, Joan?
Do I have to limit myself to one?
No, you don't. I
Oh, good,
apologize
good,
for
good.
that. Go to town.
One. You're asking me a question to limit myself to one. How does Joan Price do that? Okay, the first one is instead of using the dating apps, the swipe left and right, use the dating sites that let you post a well thought out profile and think it out. You need to present yourself in a way that is authentic, original, that shows who you are as an interesting human being and says who you're looking for in a specific enough way that someone scrolling through profile after profile will respond like this: "Ooh, that person sounds really interesting. Let me read more. Oh my gosh, this person is looking for me." If you think as you compose your profile, these are the two things that are going to happen. The person you want to attract is going to think, should I keep reading this? What's interesting about it? And how do I know if this person is looking for me? So think about those two things.
What about people who are interested in a long term relationship and not a one night stand? I'm thinking about some of the questions that you've answered about people who are wondering about how to construct an online dating profile, making it clear, don't expect me to take you home or you're going to come home with me after the first date. Or if you're just looking for a companion relationship. I remember a couple of questions where people were saying, should I wait and see if this person is interested in me at all and then introduce some of these limitations or conditions? What do you think?
Oh, I've got very strong feelings about that. First of all, if you choose one of the bigger sites, one of the things you get to determine is what kind of relationship you are looking for. You want casual dating? Do you want unconventional relationship? Do you want a hookup? Do you want a long-term relationship? Do you want marriage? You get to say that, and so you need to be careful to actually do that. Then don't be a time waster. If you're looking for something that is not what someone else is looking for, you need to just respect the person, that you're not gonna wait till a 3rd date to say, "By the way, I never want sex, I want a companionate relationship." Say that up front. If you want to have the example you gave of don't expect you'll bring me home the first date. First of all, instead of saying it as a negative, say it as a positive. Expect that we will get to know each other before we take the next steps towards intimacy. You see how different that sounds? It's an invitation. If that's who you are too, you're gonna like me, rather than, "You watch out, guy." And whatever it is you're looking for, and in fact, in this month's column, I advise a widower who is hungry for sexual connection, but also wants an intellectual connection. His wife died very recently, but he's been in grief for years because he was her caregiver as she got sicker and sicker. And I found it a really heart-wrenching question, and I'm gonna tear up even talking about it because I get that. I really get that. And he wants to know, how can I go on online dating and be honest about what I'm looking for without turning off the very people I want to attract? And so people should look up that column. It's called Lonely Widower, I believe, August 2024. I hope people will read that. And I wrote a whole book about how you regain your sexuality after your beloved died. It's called Sex After Grief.
That was a very, very poignant column. I was wondering, in all the time that you've been a columnist for Senior Planet, was there a question that threw you for a loop where it was just unique? You've never encountered a question like that before?
They're almost all unique to me because the person asking it last time is not the person asking it this time, and the backstory is different. I get questions that I don't answer because they are medical questions. I get people where their issues are because of particular medical concerns. I'm not qualified to answer those. There are some which are medical concerns, but I do know the answer because I've encountered this time after time, and I'll answer those. But if it is a medical issue and I am not the person to answer it, then I can't. I mustn't do that. I sometimes get questions that I don't feel I can answer because there's deep trauma in it. Yes, I get that. I get people who, for example, had been abused as a child, and because this sometimes is a pattern, their first husband was an abuser, and now the new relationship they're in is abusive. And it's deeply traumatic, and what they need is not an 850-word sex advice column. What they need is intensive counseling with a trauma specialist. And although usually I can only answer the questions that I use, if it's something like this, I will write a personal note to the person and say, just what I said to you. I feel anguish and great compassion for your situation, but a sex advice column is not where you're going to get help. And then I advise them on how to find a counselor whose expertise is in sexual trauma.
I'm hoping that this interview will help people be more aware of the importance of sexuality in older people. I mean, on the way here, I stopped to get a coffee at Starbucks, and the barista asked me what I was doing. And I told him I was doing a podcast about senior sexuality. And he was like, "What?" It's like, hey, dude, I ain't dead, you know? I mean, come on.
I love that. I hope you said the dude I ain't dead part too.
Indeed, I did. And then we
love it.
and then we had a laugh, but the service and the information that you give is very valuable to our readers. And in closing, maybe you could just remind people the ground rules for submitting a question to you at sexpert@seniorplanet.org so that you can get the right kind of questions, the age limit and backstory and that. Okay.
I will be happy to say that, and it is published on every column, and we've revised those so that it's easier, because I get a lot of questions that aren't right for this column. They kind of don't read that. They'll send me really quick questions. That's not going to get it answered. Occasionally, I do quickies where a one paragraph question will be answered. Normally, it's got to be a whole backstory. It's got to be the way it appears on the column that you're reading. So, first of all, you have to be 60 or above. That's what Senior Planet does. And no short questions. Check back columns to make sure I haven't addressed your topic exactly. If I have, but you have a different spin on it, put that spin on the topic in the question. Realize I'm a sex educator. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. If your question is right for my column, I will contact you, and I'll select your question only if you respond to your email. And please check your spam folder because, as I said, I talk about sex, and sometimes that means spam. And realize, of course, that I'm going to answer them publicly. The way you submit the question, this is something people maybe don't know, is not the way it's going to appear in the column. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to clarify things with you and edit your questions so that those clarifications are built in. So it's as if you asked the question this way, but behind the scenes, maybe you sent me 3 emails that I cobbled together. So just realize, don't worry, I'm not going to reveal your identity in any way. And if you say something that's going to reveal it, where you live or the name of your spouse or a specific illness that your spouse has, I'm not going to take the chance that someone who isn't supposed to know it's you is going to hear it's you. I've gone on too far, but this is all really important.
I agree. Thank you for bringing it to light. I'm so grateful, Joan, that you've been able to take time to talk to me. And it's just a real pleasure to see you after all this time.
I know what you look like now.
7 years. Oh my gosh. So I do want to thank you for doing this and for doing the wonderful work that you do for Senior Planet. And I guess that's a wrap.
It's a wrap, and it's a pleasure to talk with you.
You said it, sister.
Thank you for listening to Aging Rewired, a podcast by Senior Planet from AARP. This is the final episode of our first season. We hope you have enjoyed listening to this exploration of aging and technology as much as we have enjoyed making it. But don't worry, this isn't goodbye. It's only see you later. We'll have new episodes from our second season of Aging Rewired dropping in early 2025. But before we log off, we end every episode by sharing what aging with attitude means to our listeners. Here's what Nathaniel had to say. Aging with attitude to me means to come into the realization that your best years are ahead of you. Cheers to that, Nathaniel. If you want to share what aging with attitude means to you, head over to seniorplanet.org/podcast, where you can send us an audio note. We'll be back with more Aging Rewired next year. Until then, I'm Sheila Solomon. Keep aging with attitude. Thanks for tuning in to Aging Rewired. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe so that you can be notified whenever a new episode is released. You can also help us spread the word about the show by telling others in your community or sharing your thoughts about this episode on social media. That's one of the best ways to bring more voices into the conversation. If you'd like to learn more about Senior Planet's free technology classes, resources, and online community, visit www.seniorplanet.org or call our toll-free hotline at 888-713-3495. Until next time, I'm Sheila Solomon, and this is Aging Rewired.